Hello, to those of you who may not know me, my name is Turkish Delight, and I am a part of an IEL training server. While that does sound incredibly nerdy on the surface, trust me, it's even worse in practice. I'm making this video simply because we've done a lot of tests since the latest hotfix for Update 4 has come out, and we found quite a few interesting things. And there is a bit of misinformation currently going around on the server. So what I've done now is I've compiled a few clips of different things I'd like to talk about and discuss and share with you. Unfortunately, some of the footage I no longer have due to personal errors in recording, but that's perfectly fine because I do have at least footage for the main points I want to talk about. That has come out of this update is the changes towards Utah, which even the devs have admitted as something very, very difficult to balance. Simply because Utah during update 2 had the surprising issue, which is that any guy with an IQ above room temperature, even the US system, I know, was basically able to run up to anyone, pounce with his group, and then kill it. Yeah, it took 4 Utahs to pounce a Stego, plus something like 6 headshots, and the Stego would die within the time it took for the pounce. Since then, Utah's gone through a few nerfs. Its bite force has been decreased, the pounce has been decreased in terms of damage and turned into a bleeding tool. What has happened, however, is that due to the fact that it got changed into a bleeding tactic, it meant that the pounce was useful to do at the start of the fight, not at the end of the fight, which is how it was being used. This led to a lot of bait and switch attacks versus Stego, for example. You'd have a Utah stand behind the Stegosaurus. It would, run in, ult bite away, bait the tail swing, and then someone else would go for a headshot. When the Stego got really weak, you'd go in for the pounce and then kill it. Now it's reversed. You want to basically spam pounce. But the issue is, since update 3, is that both the Teno, the Kano, and the Stego were able to hit the Utah when it dismounted. This was due to the fact that the initial dismount wasn't that big. Now, in this update, not much has changed. Kano can no longer catch the Utah, which is good, because it means that there is now a source of rivalry between Kano and Utah. The only issue is that now Kano effectively still 2 shots of Utah, which is regardless. But we'll get into that some other time. Right now, however, we're going to be looking at Tenontosaurus versus and the Stegosaurus versus a Utah, and what we found out. One thing, the initial thing we talk about is how does the pounce right now work? The way it works right now is that you latch onto the thing, you drain your stamina. Even if you do a full stamina thing, you'll be left about 10%, and then you fall off. Or you can dismount manually, and you have a little distance, and you fling out. This distance is about 1 Utah length towards the middle of the dinosaur's body and the middle of the Utah's body, which doesn't seem like much, but the fact that you can run away straight after this means that you can get away from most attacks. Most. The second issue is that the pounce distance after the dismount is equal to the dinosaur's height, which means that Tenontosaurus, with its incredibly huge tail, and the fact that you can move the second that the Utah dismounts off you, means that the Teno can turn around and clap the Utah. Most of the times this results in a tail hit. However, 400 damage going onto a tail hit that maybe has a 60% minus damage modifier is still doing near half of the Utah's health. Which means that if a Utah pounces a Teno twice, it dies, effectively. Or you can get really unlucky with the elevation changes on the map, and you get body shot, which effectively kills you, pretty much, which is really bad. How would you change this for the Utah? A way that you could change this would be to make it so that the dismount distance is the same no matter what it's pouncing and dismounting, which means that Teno won't be able to clip the Utah's tail. Stego also has a similar issue, but Stego's issue is much worse. And so far, Philippe has been doing some tests on a new dismount for the Utah. According to some of the QA testers, they didn't even know about this issue. We've told them about it recently, and they're now starting to work on it, which is why I'm making this video actually, because I'm doing this as part of a bug report to show everything we know about the game right now and the combat, and just telling the devs what is happening and what might need to change. And the issue with the Stego is this. Say, for example, Utah pounces a Stego, which you'll be seeing in the clips behind you anyways. The Stego can hold down E straight away. If it right-clicks during any moment, the buck is cancelled instantly and the Stego swings. This may not seem like the worst thing in the entire world, but trust me, because a Utah stamina drops for about half during the initial buck of the Stegosaurus, which means that any Utah with half a brain is going to dismount very quickly, and then you swing. And if you don't swing, what happens? Which is also in the clips as well. Then the Stego hits the buck again, deals another like 40% of your stamina, gone, and then swings again. Like either way, the Stego is going to bleed out your stam. The only way you can actually get away, which is also shown in this video, is if the Utah pounces and almost immediately dismounts, which is dealing barely any bleed. Like the amount of bleed it takes to kill a Stego right now is insane. And I'm not sure if this is due to the fact that they decreased how much bleed each bite deals, or if this is just because of the Stego has just become unnaturally tanking, which is perfectly fine. Which means that Philippe, a message towards you, because you're actually working towards this, is that I've seen the new Pounce that you're making, and it's not going to change anything. Because if the Stego can still hold E and then spam right click until it hits, it doesn't matter how far away the Utah dismounts. The Utah is going to get caught mid-air, which means you've changed nothing because you're not seeing the actual issue. You're looking at you're looking at what people have said. Oh, I've dismounted and I've still been hit by a Stego, and you go, oh, okay. But it doesn't matter because yes, on the footage you see that the Utah lands, but that's because of the small latency between both of the players. On the Stego screen, it's sniping them in mid-air pretty much. That's the only way it works. The Utah hasn't got time to land and run away. So yeah, increasing the distance of the Utah's dismount may fix this issue, but it's not going to resolve it because of the bucking into tail swing. The other thing it might cause is that if you fix both of these issues at the exact same time, you could end up with a situation where a Stegosaurus can't compete with a pack of Utahs, which is bad for game balance, right? Like, you want to have your strongest herbivore be taken out by what effectively is your weakest carnivore, ignoring Pterodon. That's just not bad. It's going to feel bad for a Stegosaurus player. Like, why would you commit, 4 hours of your life into growing this thing for it to get murked by a bunch of Utahs? So we need to have more efficient combat options, but combat isn't your, how do you say, not forte, it isn't your priority right now. That's the main issue that we're having. So if you look at the actual stats, how much bleed does it take to actually kill a Stego? A lot. It takes an awful lot. Although I forgot to add about the Stego versus Utah, is that it takes about 52 headshots to kill a Stego. And that's in a row. If you have 52 headshots in a row on a Utah, one after another, the Stego will die. The issue is that with the amount of time it takes to bait out a tail swing and go in for the headshot, the Stego can actually heal the amount of damage that a bite deals it. Which means if you use the old strategy of the bait and switch of the Utah, the Stego is going to heal faster than you can apply damage. Which therefore means that pouncing is the only way for the Utahs to actually fight a Stego. Unless the devs want to just flat out say that Utahs can't fight Stegos. Which is, I did have videos of me playing Stego and of our resident Stego players on our testing server. A link will be in this video as well. Chonky and hard is my style. They were incredibly good at playing Stego. When I was playing as the Stego, I killed half the Utahs, and the final 3 basically bled me out. There was not much I could do. I was running out of stamina. I couldn't swing. When hard is my style played Stego, he killed 4 of them within the first minute of the fight. Okay, and the other 2 couldn't do anything. How much bleed did he take? About 30%. Health loss was about 20. Incredibly strong. The Stego is. I don't mind the Stego being strong. Yes, I like playing Utah. I feel like Utah should have the option to be able to hunt everything, as right now it is the only dinosaur in the game that relies on bleed to kill, which is different from everything else. Everything else requires on pure damage, which means that the Utah, technically speaking, bleed could kill everything in the game. It's about the application of bleed and how that works. And I really think that the devs need to focus on understanding how they want Utah to fight. Is Utah going to be unique in terms of these dinosaurs that we have right now, in that it relies on bleed to kill? In which case, give it the finesse to be able to like bait attacks. Maybe even give it like a dedicated dodge button. Because currently, right now, what we are doing, which is a second part to actually talk about with the Utah, that's with Carno, is the alt bite. The Utah's alt bite is effectively a dodge mechanic right now. Many people have posted a lot of clips onto the Reddit saying, just juke the Carno, effectively. And they're basically doing it wrong because of the Carno speed and the way that it can turn and effectively flick and bite Utah, which I think is incredibly cool. For the Utah, not so far. What you do, however, is that with the Utah, is that you bait going one direction, you turn your camera to face the Carno. You bait going one direction, and your camera is now into perfect place to now alt bite the opposite direction. The Carno cannot turn in time to react to this because the alt bite is incredibly fast. So effectively, the alt bite of a Utah is a dodging mechanic. You can do the exact same thing with Tenos and Stegos. If you run towards the Stego, flick your camera behind you, and then alt bite, the Stego's going to swing, thinking that you're running towards it, and then you can now go in and pounce. That would be a nice way to balance Utah at the moment, is to have Utah be able to pounce only after it's maybe like baited out and attack. Or maybe even have it so that Utah can only pounce when the dinosaur's standing still. If the dinosaur's walking, or if it's running, especially if it's running, you get flung off instantly. Which means that you have to catch the dinosaur when it's idle. Which means you're an ambush predator, or you're a technical skill-based predator. Yeah, you bait in attacks, you bait out, you pounce, you deal your bleed, and then you wait for things to die. And therefore, it's the dinosaur's role after these initial pounces to stop further pounces and then punish Utah's being greedy with their pounces. However, this can fall into the trap of what I'm going to call depression-based gameplay, in which for the herbivore player going up against 8 Utahs, it's going to be despair-inducing. Yeah, you're going to be like waiting around to bleed. That's not intrinsically fun. But that's the issue with Utah right now. There's not much you can do. If you keep buffing the Utah the way you're going to be buffing it right now, especially Philippe, where the distance increases, you're going to get to the point where back at update 2. Yeah, where people are just going to spam Pounce with little IQ, little brain cells, whatever, and then get, a good amount of bleed out of it, and then kill things that maybe they won't be able to kill. What would be better, however, is to add requirements for the pounce. Yeah, so maybe you can only pounce with a Utah when you're above half stam as a requirement. Then maybe add that you can only do it after the thing's standing still. Like, yes, this could break Utah for the least skilled player, in which case you've maintained your ecosystem, right? Utah's hunting Dryos, it's hunting Juvies, it's hunting subs, right? Because Utah's role right now is to prevent things from growing. That's what it does. It prevents. You see a sub Carno, sub Stego, sub Teno, it kills it. Done. You pounce it, it gets pinned, it dies. But if you add these technical tools into the Utah's toolkit, I guess, it has the possibility to have a very, very high skill ceiling, which is what I think the Utah should be. It should have one of the highest skill ceilings in the entire game. So potentially it can kill anything in the game, but on the flip side, it dies instantly. If it gets hit once, it dies, and I'm fine with that. Because you have 8 of them in a pack. Is it silly that we have 8 Tenos and 8 Carnos in a pack? Yes. Maybe limit Tenos down to 4, Carnos down to 4, Stegos are 2, Dinos are 2, and you have 8 Utahs. Which is that you can effectively use your Utahs as meat shields, because Utah is operating as a group, not as a solo. Also, the fact that they take less food to do it. Actually, no, that's an even better idea. Actually, wait, let's cut this. With balancing packs, it's the base off of hunger. Yeah, so you base carnivore packs off of how much hunger each of them requires. So let's say, for example, that 8 Utahs require the same amount of food per hour as 4 Carnos. That's, in my opinion, equal balancing. It means that 4 Carnos have just as much ability to survive as 4 Utahs, assuming that both of them can hunt readily what they need to eat. That's my main point. But overall, Utah, as it stands, is in a very, very awkward place. Yeah, it can tip the balance and become stupidly overpowered in the wrong hands, or it could become, very strong and precise in the right hands, right? Which are 2 very, very different things. You don't want casual players to be able to kill the strongest things in the game, because that upsets the balance. But you want good players to feel like there is an option for good gameplay. Yeah, there is a risk versus a reward, and that's what the devs need to balance right now. Is that even if you want an ecosystem where one thing kills another thing and can't kill another thing, you have to remember that ecosystems don't always work like that. Human beings are an important example. Utahs in the game right now are the closest thing we have that act like human beings. They're small, they're easily one-shottable, but they're able to effectively bleed things to death and run them down. Same things humans used to do, right? Human being fights like some bear during the Ice Age. We can't fight a bear. Maybe like Mike Tyson could knock out a bear with a punch. I don't know. I don't really care. But we had spears, right? Which work very much like the Pounce. Spear goes in, it gets lodged around, spear comes out. The thing is now bleeding. So if you balance it around this bleed mechanic, I think Utah's going to be way, way, way easier to fix. Yeah? Fix it around the bleed mechanic. How much bleed can a Utah do in one pounce? How many pounces does it take to do it? Say, for example, it takes 10 full pounces, which is 6 seconds times by 10, a minute. A minute of pure pouncing to get a Stego down to the point where the Stego will naturally bleed out to death, right? And then you do it so that, that's 6 out of 8 Utahs. And you give the Stego the ability where, in testing, the Stego is able to kill half the pack, for example, right? So that's now down to 4 Utahs. 4 Utahs could potentially finish off that bleed, or they could run away. That's how you then balance that around that bleed mechanic. How well can it apply that bleed? What's the punishment for doing so? That's what you should do. And I think that would then fix Utah way, way better.